Hey, welcome to Tactical 40K. I wanted to talk about the impending doom of Oath of Moment as we know it, and the rest of Warhammer outside of Space Marines rejoices, and I can hear their laughter already. It was one of the things where you went to an event or played somebody, and you'd cast your oath, and you'd be able to, especially if you used a lot of big guns and concentrated fire and took out like one of their pinnacle or prime pieces or units, it really got to them. And in reality, when I look at the balance of everything, whether going up against whatever a Custodes unit or a Necron or any kind of other army, all of them had these weird abilities. To me, I was like, wow, that's pretty powerful. And at the same time, when I looked at ours, I was like, wow, yeah, I can. In Gladius, you can choose certain doctrines, but they were very monothic in a sense. I mean, it's like a utility knife that's not good at any one thing, or it's not great at any one thing. It's good at a number of things. Like in your utility knife, you have a knife to cut things, maybe a little saw, and then maybe a screwdriver. Where a lot of these other armies had like a blade of some sort that far superior than the knife. And so Oath of Moment was kind of like one of those tools in the toolbox that kind of leveled the playing field. And not to the fact that you can like neutralize multiple units in a given round, battle round. I mean, of course, over the course of a game, yes. But what it allowed you to do is, one, if you're playing the missions, man, my nose, hang on. If you're playing the missions, like Bring It Down or something like that, it really helped. But it also helped save some of your units by being able to take out some of those big terrifying units. So what did it do? It allowed you to re-roll hit rolls, allows you to re-roll wound rolls. So what's Oath of Moment going to be now? Well, it's going to be re-roll hit rolls. And the reason why a lot of Space Marine players they recognize that it's kind of pretty powerful, and it's in a very monopic sense, in a very specific manner, that it should be broadened out. The strength of the army, it shouldn't be predicated on this one thing. I refer to it as a crutch, but a really good crutch that I enjoyed. But what does I say? That's what the Space Marines weren't that overpowered. They weren't overpowered, to be totally honest, at all. So the fact that this is getting nerfed is a little disconcerting. But they did allude in the articles, which there hasn't been that many leaks. Finally, there was one about like the Salamanders detachment, but they were saying there's going to be more ways to re-roll wound rolls, which to me, I was like, well, how do I plan? I guess I'm going to wait for the codex. But right now, when I'm playing, I'm like, well, how do I plan for this if this changes and there isn't? Maybe they lied to us or whatever. It's not as prevalent. Re-rolls of wounds anymore. So what am I doing? I'm looking at different variations of some of the units that I have and how to incorporate either the ability to bypass the wound roll, or which like lethal hits. So I've tried to put, especially in my infantry units, I was like, oh man, maybe I should lean on these lieutenants a little bit more, and also maybe some strats. I don't know what strats to use, but I was actually, that was where I was looking at some of the new Vanguard, the Raven Guard thing. I was like, oh man, if I could use a couple of these strats, if I can get these battle tactics, and I can get these captains. But that's it regardless. So I'm also looking at some of these tanks. So how you get around this. So if we're gonna go just re-roll hit rolls, like I had a big executioner tank that I would utilize to affect that Oath of Moment. Now that's going to be toned down a little bit. Now, what else did I take? And what else should you take, or somebody else that wants to keep kind of a similar, I call it the mini Oath. Well, that's a Lancer. Lancer, granted, they're 160 points now instead of whatever, I think they were 150 or 140 or something before the balanced data sheet, but they have mini Oath. And I think the only difference is you re-roll one of the hit rolls, one of the wound rolls, and you can re-roll damage, which it's a D6 plus 3, I believe, damage. So the Lancer is my like ace in the hole with this, going against this nerf. And I run a Lancer. I was thinking about even taking my Executioner out and maybe running another Lancer, and then running some other unit from the point savings. I mean, I might experiment with it. There's other, but so the Lancer is my number one, like, okay, oath unit, new oath unit. It really is. Or you can go to like Eradicators. I think Eradicators have a very similar thing. I'm not too familiar with all the infantry units and their abilities to reroll wounds, but I believe the Eradicators have something that's kind of close. But granted, I'm just talking the Gladius right now, because when we get into the Vanguard stuff, excuse me, and some of these other ones, there might be other abilities we don't know yet, and there might be other ways to play than just relying on something like this. But right now, currently, like how I'm playing, this is what I'm looking at. So I'm like, okay, well, my Lancer's going to play a little bit more of a role. Okay, what else is? Well, I look over here, I'm checking out my other Gladiator variants, the Valiant, whatever how you want to pronounce it, the Reaper. They both have twin link turret cannons, or turrets. So if you're going after big stuff like monsters, the Valiant has 2 multi-meltas and a twin las cannon. The twin las cannon is your twin link. It also gets a +1 to the hit essentially against monsters and vehicles. So that's an underutilized unit that I think the value of that unit has just gone up with Oath being axed a little bit or being trimmed down. Also, you look at that Reaper, which I just think it's fun. The Reaper, the Gladiator Reaper, you got devastating wounds on it and it's twin linked. I mean, you're fishing for 6s essentially on there. And I heard a rumor about the Iron Hands getting lethal hits on that if you ever attack Marine around. Dude, that is a powerful combo. But anyway, so you got that. You're just gonna have to. What Oath that reroll wound did is it allowed you to not just take down the target, because you can take down the target with overwhelming firepower, but it allowed you to pretty much allocate other weaponry to additional targets instead of like having to blast. Like now, I'm gonna probably, if I have my Executioner in my list, I'm probably going to make sure that I take that and the rest of the high power stuff, maybe even the Gatling gun, and really rail into whatever I'm going after, to make sure that it's dead on turn 1 instead of, I don't want it to survive multiple turns. Whereas before you could split fire maybe a couple more. You felt better about split firing. I guess that's how I'd say it. I felt better about split firing certain weapons and allocating other attacks from various other vehicles or high-powered units to somewhere else. And the reason I'm talking like this is because I use my Oath mainly to take out their big things, whether it be like a big monster or a big vehicle, because I feel more confident when I get those big high-powered weaponry, get at least some of that neutralized. And it affords me a little bit more mobility around the board if I can neutralize those big targets that are set up in various ways to essentially annihilate me. And, I guess going back to what I was just saying, I know I'm bouncing all over the place, but it just keeps popping in my head. I was like, other armies have like crazy stuff that they do, and nobody was really complaining. Like things would happen to me, whether it be somebody keeps bringing without, an apothecary. I mean, because they're different, armies, Xenos armies or whatever. Somebody starts bringing back units randomly, or all of a sudden everybody has a -1 to wound, or everybody has a 5-up, feel no pain, or you can roll dice and you get some special ability every freaking turn. And I was just like, wow, this is crazy. But I'm not sitting here complaining about it. I'm sitting here like, okay, how do I work my way around this? Because this is obviously something that's innate with this army, that's part of the lore or whatever it has, and I need to figure out a way to get around this and defeat whoever I'm up against. It's nothing so astronomically crazy that I'm just dead in the water to begin with. In that case, yeah, I would kind of complain. But Oath the Moment was like our thing as Space Marines, and it wasn't entirely too crazy. And it was one of those things that I realistically, in my mind, I was just thinking, like, if there were Space Marines or whatever, it would be like one of those things. It's like an order almost, like goes through the wires. Like, hey, this is a priority target that needs to be hit, and you need to make it count. And that's why I looked at it with the moment. So I don't know. It'll still be there, and you'll still be able to put hits on reroll hits. But now we look to the wound rolls and try to figure out some things we can do there to maximize our own firepower. So I've been going through some data sheets and just checking it out. But like I said, for my big stuff, it's like might be looking at more gladiator stuff because they have a lot of twin linked turret weapons as opposed to the repulsor and the executioner, which they do have some. I think they each have a twin linked weapon, but it's like a bolter or something. Or I think the last cannon on the repulsor, which you only get one shot with that thing anyway. But whatever. But when you take, we're already at 10 minutes. I'm going to end this one. But we take like the Valiant, which I think is the most underrated tank at the moment. You have a twin link las Talon, which is a strength 10 weapon, and it's a d6 +1 damage. But there's two of them. You get 2 shots. If you're going after a monster vehicle, you get +1 hits, or you're hitting on 2s. Then you re-roll for twin link. I mean, that essentially to me, that is as close to you can replicate Oath of Moment as opposed outside the Lancer. Lancer is even better than Oath of Moment, to be totally honest, in a sense, because you get to re-roll the damage rules. So, or one of them. And you think if you actually cleared 2 shots off the Lancer's strength 14 weapon, you cleared 2 shots in there, you got d6 +3 times 2. So you're clearing 6 wounds at the very least. And if you roll, let's say, 2 double 3s, and you're now looking at whatever 12 wounds, and you're, let's say hypothetically, whatever a 14 wound target, and you're like, okay, I got him down to 2 wounds. I could re-roll one of these and get lucky. It's a 50-50 shot, pretty much, and or not 50-50 shot, because you'd have to get like a 5 or something, but hypothetically, or you roll a 4 and a 3 and you need 1 wound or something like that to knock this thing down, or 2, or whatever the case may be. You know what I'm getting at. You can take one of those dice and re-roll it, where Oath of Moment doesn't allow you to do that. But so like I said, the Lancer is my number 1. Valiant is kind of a close second, and the Reaper, and those are just like the tanky stuff. Now when we get to the infantry and all that jazz, your Inceptors, I should have brought them up earlier in this video. Inceptors, Eradicators, I'm trying to think about the twin link stuff, but the Inceptors are looking pretty spicy then too. I'm running some plasma ones, and I think if you run the bolters, you get sustained hits too, I believe. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I got them right here actually, somewhere. Oh, last thing, or say goodbye to these guys. These guys are cool. This is like one of the coolest units for 75 points, concealed positions, sniper rifle that's, you know, granted strength 4, but it's a -2 AP, 2 damage. I mean, that was my MVP against the Custodes of all things. Oh yeah, okay. So yeah, sustain 2 twin linked auto assault bolters, and they're strength 5, -1 AP, 2 damage. Not bad at all. But you can, you know, the plasmas are still twin links, so if you're oathing something, you reroll hits and then reroll wounds. It's not looking terrible. So I mean, they look good. Then you look at some of your like melee stuff, where you want to get the melee Vanguard vets with lethal hits ability when you charge in there. That's good for us Raven Guard types. I know I said I was going to be done, but us Raven Guard types, you got the Strike Daddy with his twin linked Raven Talons, and don't underestimate Shrike. I've had him in combat, hand-to-hand combat, a couple of times now, and the dude puts out, especially with the Vanguard vets around him. Like, he straight slays people, even it's just strength 5, 2 damage, but I get him in there with 7 attacks, and then I keep forgetting that, they get the same abilities as the unit that you are part of, and I didn't even realize he had lethal hits. So the first 2 games, that's my bad because I get so involved in it, but this dude has lethal hits. He's even more powerful than I've been playing him. So Shrike with Vanguard vets is still, I guess I'm now going to something, the new Assault Intercessors, but Strike with Vanguard vets is still the way to go. I'm thinking about picking up another pack of Vanguard vets, to be totally honest, and running them as a 10-man squad with Strike, and just have the ultimate infantry slay team running the board. It will be a blast. Anyway, I'm throwing that one out there. That sounds fun. Anyway, I'll talk to you later. Peace.